And that was a scene from last week's episode of HBO's hit miniseries Chernobyl. The show chronicles the events surrounding the nuclear disaster in the Soviet Union in 1986. As the series comes to an end tonight, we wanted an expert to weigh in on the accuracy of certain events portrayed on the screen. Adam Higginbotham is the author of Midnight in Chernobyl, the Untold Story of the World's Greatest Nuclear Disaster. It is published by Simon & Schuster, a division of CBS. Adam joins me now on set. Adam, what a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get to the actual series, tell us a little bit about your book. What does it focus on exactly?
Well, it tells the whole story of the disaster from its origins in the early 1970s when they began designing this reactor that they installed there.
And what type of research did you do for the book? Did you spend a lot of time physically there?
I did. I went to the scene and to the exclusion zone surrounding the remains of the reactor many times, and interviewed kind of I think around 80 eyewitnesses and people who were there over the years.
And so when you look at the series, which I'm assuming you've watched,
I've seen it up to this point.
Up to this point, great. When you look at it, are there certain things that jump out at you as, wow, they got that just right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are like, there's the scene where these guys are clearing the rooftop of this radioactive debris, which seems like it's kind of shot for shot from documentary footage that was shot at the time. I mean, the sort of production design is extraordinary.
And I think this may be the scene that you're talking about, where these guys are just shoveling radioactive waste back into the reactor? What are they doing there?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking shovels and they're picking up pieces of extremely radioactive debris and then running to the edge of the roof and throwing it off the edge of the roof into the remains of the reactor. Which
is essentially, I mean, I would imagine almost a suicide mission, correct? I mean, these...
Well, it wasn't safe. I wouldn't want to do it.
No.
But they were timed for the amount of time they could be out there in seconds to limit their exposure to what at the time was regarded as safe as it could be, given what they were doing.
It's so scary. So, as you mentioned, of course, this is a TV series drama. So.
Right.
By virtue of that fact, it is fictionalized. Parts of it are fictionalized. Right. Are there certain things that you look at and that you say, well, that's just clearly made up, or that was clearly heavily exaggerated?
Well, there's things that are made up for the purposes of drama. So they've invented one character out of whole cloth, this, campaigning nuclear scientist who materializes and uncovers the truth.
Alana I can't pronounce the last name, but Komyuk? Is that who that is?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So she's
a composite character then, almost?
Well, I mean, I think they say she's a composite character, but a composite character of whom I couldn't really discern. Because the problem with this character is that she comes and uncovers the truth, and she's like a sort of campaigning whistleblower character. But in reality, Soviet nuclear scientists knew all along that there were problems with this reactor, the problems that led ultimately to an explosion and disaster. So there wasn't any need to uncover the truth.
There was no
speak
surprise.
Truth to, no.
Interesting. And sometimes it does seem as if Soviet officials are rather blasé about this. There's sort of almost a lack of concern, at least as it's portrayed in the series.
Well, I think that is true.
And that is accurate.
Because they were just extremely reckless about radiation exposure, partly because they didn't understand it. And on the other hand, there are other scientists who'd had such long experience with nuclear power that they just got sort of kind of cocksure about it.
And then was there a lot of disagreement among officials as to how to move forward after the explosion?
Yeah, well, certainly. There was disagreement about whether or not they should evacuate the citizens of the town that was only 3 kilometers away from the plant. So there was argument and disagreement about that, although I don't think that's actually been depicted in the show.
And how do Soviets, modern Russians, reflect on this disaster now? How does it factor into modern popular culture or lore there?
Well, I'm not sure it does. It's just a kind of, because a lot of people have asked me when I was reporting in Moscow, for instance, whether I encountered any kind of, official pushback or if I was followed by somebody who didn't want me to. But, it's just a kind of accepted part of history now.
Right.
Because it happened 30 years ago, and so many other things have happened in Moscow since 1986 that it's kind of got, pushed into the background, I think.
And then what is the state of Chernobyl? I mean, obviously humans aren't living there, but has there been any return of the natural world?
Well, a lot of animals have come back.
Interesting.
And a lot of plant life have come back. So this town is now kind of overgrown with forest. And this has led to this popular conception that animals are thriving in the presence of radioactivity. Although I'm not sure that's completely correct. There's a lot of scientific controversy about this, because it seems that the truth is that they've thrived because there are no people there.
Right.
And that although, you know, radioactivity is probably very bad for animals, human beings
it's not as bad as human beings.
Exactly.
That's a pretty grim thought. And do you sense, though, that Chernobyl, it will never come back as a location for human existence?
Well, never is a long time. I mean, if you stick around for like 100,000 years, I'm sure we'll be back.
That's true.
But now it's, you know, it's a tourist attraction. The city is a tourist attraction. 70,000 people went there last year.
Have you toured it recently?
I haven't. I've never toured
it.
I mean,
as a tourist.
I've been there several times in order to report the book, so that I could, you know, find out where people lived, kind of discover the route that they took to take the bus and stuff like that, to reconstruct things in detail. But the last time I was there was in 2016, and since then there's been so much tourism that the latest cleanup operation in the exclusion zone has been to go and clean up the litter that all of these people have left behind. Amazing.
That is actually very interesting news. All right. What a pleasure talking to you. Adam, thank you so much for coming to see us.